Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of Digital Fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and today we're back at it with another spoiler video for TARKIR DRAGONSTORM, and I'm calling this one the finale, or at least finale part 1, because even though there's more spoilers coming tomorrow, the bulk of the rares have actually dropped today. Most of the rares are now known. We do have one or two that are lingering that will be announced tomorrow, so we will have a spoiler season finale part 2 video coming out tomorrow, but it's mostly going to be the common and uncommon dumps and then those last couple of rares. So this is finale part 1. The vast majority of the rares that were left to announce are announced in this video. We're going to jump right in and get cracking because we have a lot to get through. Before we do, please like the video. It helps me get it out to more people and helps the channel grow. I would appreciate it so much. And subscribe if you're new so you never miss an upload. Let's do it. First up, we've got Ambling Stormshell. This is a 5/9 turtle with Ward 2 for 2 blue and 3. And whenever this creature attacks, you put 3 stun counters on it and draw 3 cards. But whenever you cast a turtle spell, you get to untap this creature. So at first inspection, it seems like they're really trying to push Turtle Tribal, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more turtle creature types coming in more sets down the line over the next year or two, just to make this card even more viable. But I think the best way to use this is actually with Vigilance. Anything that can give the Ambling Stormshell Vigilance means it can attack, get that draw trigger, and sure, it gets 3 stun counters, but it doesn't get tapped down. So it never has to worry about getting rid of them unless your opponent finds a way to tap down your Ambling Stormshell, which means you can attack every single turn, draw 3 cards every single turn. You don't need to do combat damage to do it, and because of the vigilance, you'd still be able to hold this up as a blocker on your end as well. And with 9 toughness, that's pretty substantial. So I think this is actually really cool, and I want to try to build that. So I'm going to put a question out to you guys. What do you think are the best ways to give Ambling Stormshell Vigilance in Standard? If you have ideas, definitely let me know in the comments, because we're going to build it. We're going to brew it for sure. I don't know how good it's going to be. It could be a meme, but it could end up being insane, so we're going to try. Next up, we've got Kheru Goldkeeper. This thing is so close to being a rare, it's crazy. A 3/3 dragon with flying for 4 mana in the colors of Sultai. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard during your turn, you get to create a treasure token. Now, it does say 1 or more, which means you can't just exile an entire graveyard in one go and make a whole bunch of treasure tokens, right? You have to do each card one at a time, but there are already plenty of cards that want you to do that anyway, stuff like Insidious Roots and 𝐒𝐏𝐻𝐻 and stuff like that. So I feel like this might be a no-brainer in some kind of new Sultai Roots deck, where every single time you exile a card, one at a time at least, you get to make a treasure token, and then you can use that mana to fuel doing even more of those shenanigans. So I would be very surprised if this doesn't pop up in some standard deck lists. Will it be enough to make those decks competitive within the meta? It's hard to say. We have to find the absolute most efficient ways to make this happen, but I think there's a lot of potential for it at least, and I'm excited. So again, this is another one. If you have ideas about how we can get the most out of this ability, let me know in the comments, because I think it's kind of wild. But it doesn't stop there. It also has a Renew ability built in for 5 mana in the colors of Sultai. You exile this card from your graveyard, put 2 +1/+1 counters and a flying counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. Now, on first inspection, it kind of looks like that ability is a non-bow with the first ability, because if it's in the graveyard and you exile it, it's not in play to see something get exiled and make a treasure token. It does work if you have 1 in play and 1 in the graveyard. You can use the Renew from the graveyard and get that trigger and get that treasure token. But I think it's just a sort of redundancy backup. It's like, plan A, have this in play, make a whole bunch of treasures, and combo off into Insanity. But plan B, even if this just ends up in your graveyard, it does have a way to exile itself and potentially turn one of your creatures into a game-ending threat because of the flying counter and the 2 +1/+1 counters, just buffing it into an evasive win con. So I think Renew being an awesome plan B and an alternative way to use it in a deck that's primarily built around that first ability would be pretty nuts. So I think this will actually see play in Standard. I just don't know if that deck ends up being good enough to be a top contender in the meta, but we're going to find out. Limited, this is nuts. Grab it, play it, never look back. Next up, we've got Osseous Exhale, an instant for 1 white and 1. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may behold a dragon, which means choose a dragon you control or reveal a dragon card in your hand. Osseous Exhale deals 5 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and if a dragon was beheld, you gain 2 life. Now, what I like about the behold mechanic on commons like this is you don't have to show something from your hand. So this is like just incidental extra value if you happen to have a dragon out, right? If you have a dragon out, it's literally no opportunity cost whatsoever. It's just there's a dragon there, so you gain 2 life, which is kind of awesome. Now, if you have a dragon in your hand, you do have to make a difficult decision of, do you give away what you have in your hand? Is it worth it for the 2 life? But even just having that option is still better than not having the option. So either way you spin it, I think this card is pretty cool. It's mostly meant to be extra backup removal in your limited decks if you're running short. But I think it has a chance to be really, really good. Next up, we've got Mammoth Bellow, a sorcery for 5 mana in the colors of Temur. You create a 5/5 green elephant creature token, and then it has Harmonize for 8 mana in the colors of Temur. So if you happen to have a 5-power creature in play, you can replay this from the graveyard for only 3 mana, make another 5/5. This reminds me a lot of Call of the Herd, and it has more hoops to jump through than Call of the Herd, but Call of the Herd was a great card back in the day, and I don't know, man, this seems like it has a lot of potential. It's definitely going to be amazing in Limited because it gives you automatic 2-for-1 value as long as the game goes long enough for you to utilize that Harmonize ability. And if you're in self-mill decks or discard decks or anything like that, being able to get extra value off whatever you're dumping into your graveyard is just awesome, free value. So I think this is great and Limited. Probably a little bit too cost prohibitive for Standard, but I still think it's a good card. Next up, we've got Molten Exhale, a sorcery for 1 red and 1. You may cast this spell as though it had flash if you behold a dragon as an additional cost to cast it. And then it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So this is like a 2 mana instant speed 4 damage spell in the right deck, and that's kind of nuts. It can hit planeswalkers in addition to creatures, so that's a nice little bit of silver lining value. I just love everything about this card in Limited. Obviously, if there is a standard dragon deck, this is in contention for being in it. I don't know if it definitely makes the cut. The card pool in Standard these days is insanely big, and everything has to be that much better in order to make the cut in decks. But this definitely has a chance if you're running a deck that has a high threshold of dragons, just because you're getting 4 damage for 2 mana, and you're not necessarily giving up that instant speed, at least under the right circumstances. I think in Limited, this is going to be super awesome. Easily grab this and run it as part of your removal suite. But next up, we've got Warden of the Grove. This is another rare that we saw, 1 green and 2 for a 2/2 Hydra. At the beginning of your end step, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and whenever another non-token creature you control enters, it endures X, where X is the number of counters on this creature. This card is insane, and if you could put even more counters on this thing, it gets even crazier. And I want to point out that it counts all of the counters on this creature, similar to the doll that we got in Duskmourn that makes spider tokens. It doesn't only care about the kind of counters it puts on itself, right? It's going to care about every counter that's on it. So if you have ways of putting flying counters, death strike counters, whatever the case may be, on the Warden, that's going to help to make it endure your other creatures that much more, or add endure to your other creatures, whatever the case may be. I think this is bananas. Finding more ways to put counters on this is going to make it even better. But it basically just reads every single creature you play enters with extra +1/+1 counters or creates a free XX token creature. Every single one. No matter what. Even if this thing only has 1 counter on it, you're either making a 1/1 creature or getting a free +1/+1 counter on every single creature you play from that point on until they kill this thing. And it gets even crazier if you scale and you get even more counters on this. The longer this stays out, it automatically gets 1 at end step. And if you put more on yourself, it just gets absolutely, utterly absurd. So This is probably the best Hydra we've seen in a long time, and it's definitely ripe for brewing with. So if you have ideas about how you want to use it, let me know in the comments, because I think it looks absolutely bananas. But next up, we've got Zergo's Vanguard, a dog soldier with Mobilize 1 for 1 red and 2. It has star power and 3 toughness, and its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. This is actually really cool because the Mobilize ability is going to boost its power, albeit temporarily, because you have to sacrifice that token at the end of turn. But it's always going to swing as a 2-3. It comes down as a 1-3. Even if it's the only creature on the board, when it attacks, it makes a token, and that immediately buffs up its power to 2 because you have the Zergo's Vanguard and the token, right? Which is really awesome to me. There can be a way to interact with that and lose some of that if your opponent blocks your token with a first striker and kills it, you know, before whatever they blocked the Vanguard with takes the Vanguard's damage, then, you know, that's going to be problematic for you. So there's some cool ways around it, but this is obviously meant to be used in a super go wide deck where the power is going to be astronomical at all times, and they probably have to trade something relevant for it to get rid of it. Most importantly, it's just going to be great and limited. I love the idea that this can go in any of the go wide decks, whether it's Sacrifice or whatever the case may be, and just works super well in the limited environment. But next up, we've got Jeskai Brushmaster, a 2/4 Orc Monk for 4 mana in the colors of Jeskai. He has Double Strike and Prowess. That's all you need to know. That Double Strike and Prowess is insane. It almost feels like the bird that we got in Thunder Junction, which was everywhere right after Thunder Junction. Most people have calmed down on that. The slick shot show off. Most people kind of walked back running it and favor the mice, but it still rears its ugly head in mono red for sure. It kind of feels like that because the double strike means that every prowess trigger, it feels like it's giving it +2/+1 rather than +1/+1. So it's gonna feel a lot like a slick shot, except it's a slick shot that's a really good blocker. And even if you don't get the prowess trigger, is still doing a ton of damage, is still getting through for 4, which is super relevant. So it's almost like a slick shot that plays it more safe, but doesn't have the evasion. It is more expensive, of course, so it's not going to be anywhere near as good as slick shot. I don't expect to see it popping up in all of the standard decks, although it is powerful enough. I would say there's a chance. There's a chance it could be playable in standard. I'm going to lean towards no. I think if we were still in the 2-year rotation standard, where there just wasn't an embarrassment of ridiculously good card quality options to include in every deck, I think this would maybe have a chance. But because it's a 3-year standard, I think this maybe might not make the cut there. But either way, it's going to be bananas and limited. If you're in Jeskai, you need to run this guy and then just bully your opponent to death. Next up, we've got Synchronized Charge, a sorcery for 1 green and 1. Distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. And creatures you control with counters on them gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. So what you're telling me is this is the card we want to use with the turtle that we saw at the beginning of the video. Give it Vigilance, give it Trample, give it a bunch of counters, draw a bunch of cards. Sounds pretty good. It also has Harmonize for 1 green and 4. So you could play this for as little as just 1 green mana flashed back from your graveyard if you have a 4-power creature that you can tap down to help pay for the colorless. And that's just a lot of value. Even if you just self-mill this into your yard and only use the Harmonize, it's just free value. I kind of love this. It is sorcery speed, so you can't use it as a trick. That's the only downside. But I think the cost makes this card so efficient that I think instant speed would just be way too powerful. As it is, this card's just going to be really, really good. Help you to close out games, and it doesn't feel like as much of a waste if you need to use it earlier in the game while you're curving out to just bully your opponent a little bit, maybe force them to block when they don't want to and lose a creature, something like that, because you have the Harmonize to use later. So with most cards like this that want to buff your creature up for the final Alpha Strike to win the game, you get a little trepidatious about having to use them early, especially if you can't use them as a trick because they're sorcery speed. But with the Harmonize, you still get to do that later in the game, so it doesn't feel quite as bad if you have to use it earlier. Next up, we've got Meticulous Artisan, a Djinn Artificer. That's a 3/3, a 3/3 Djinn Artificer. Say that 3 times fast. For 1 red and 3. It has Prowess, and when it enters, you create a treasure token. I think this guy's going to be really good in Limited. For a common, it fixes you, it ramps you, and it gives you a relevant body. And even though that body is a little bit less than the mana that you spent, you do have the Prowess to help make it up. And getting that treasure token makes this guy kind of feel like he's really 1 red and 2. And then you convert 1 colorless mana into a treasure token, which feels a lot better when you realize you only have to lose 1 card from your hand to get both of those things. The more you think about it, the more valuable this guy seems, and I think he's going to be really good in Limited. I don't think he'll be super good in Constructed. He won't make the cut, he's just too expensive. But next up, we've got Hardened Tactician, a 2/4 human warrior for 3 mana in the colors of 𝐿, and you can pay 1 and sack a token to draw a card. The coolest part about this guy is the fact that you don't have to sacrifice a creature token. You can literally just sacrifice like a blood token or a map token or whatever you want to draw a card. So this guy might even make the cut in certain types of sacrifice decks, aristocrats decks. Maybe we play, I don't know, maybe Mardu, because you could use Disturbing Mirth. You're still going to want enough tokens. So it is a careful balance there. I don't think at the end of the day this guy quite makes the cut for Standard because, again, the card pool is just insane. But if we were in a 2-year rotation, this is another one that I think would be considered at least for a Standard deck. Either way, if you're in any kind of go wide token deck in Limited, this guy's a no-brainer. You want to slam him and move on with your life. He's just a ton of card advantage. And it's even instant speed, right? So you could block with a 1/1 creature token and then sack it after blocks because it's going to die anyway to draw cards. And you start to really outvalue your opponent super fast when you start doing things like that. So I kind of love this guy. I can't wait to use him in Limited. I also want to point out, missing an arm. That's kind of cool. I feel like that was done pretty deliberately, right? What's the flavor text? Life is full of tough calls. We honor the dead today to make better decisions tomorrow. Interesting. I wonder if there's a story implication for the missing arm. But next up, we've got Stillness in Motion, the next rare today. This is an enchantment for 1 blue and 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you mill 3 cards, and then if your library has no cards in it, you exile this enchantment and put 5 cards from your graveyard on top of your library in any order. This feels to me like it's meant to be a combo piece for some kind of a new Thassa's Oracle style combo deck, where you just set yourself up with the best 5 cards from your graveyard to combo off of, knowing that they're the next 5 cards you're going to draw. But it can be used in a bunch of different ways. You can even just use this in a self-mill deck to just get your pieces into the yard. And the fact that it has, you know, the ability to exile and set up your deck with 5 cards is kind of just extra. I know Roaming Boss, one of my frequent viewers over on Twitch, is excited to use it in his Omniscience deck. Just the idea of jamming this on 2 and milling 6 cards by the time you want to combo off on turn 4, with getting your Omniscience out of the yard and all of those types of shenanigans, could be valuable in and of itself. And I know he's excited to try it that way. So pretty interesting card. I feel like they have something very particular in mind for this, and I don't think anybody realizes what that is quite yet, but somebody will. And somebody will abuse it, and then maybe it will be good enough to be a part of the meta, be a staple in Standard. I'm certainly hoping not, because Thassa's Oracle decks are obnoxious enough, and if we get some version of that in Standard, I'm going to lose my mind. But next up, we've got Traveling Botanist, a 2/3 Dog Scout for 1 green and 1. When he becomes tapped, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can reveal it, put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you can put it into your graveyard. This guy's really good. Even for Limited in particular, a 2/3 for 2 can hold the fort pretty decently. And then just every time you tap, you get a chance to just grab a land, which seems pretty good. And if you don't grab a land, you can still start to fill up some of your graveyard synergies by, you know, dumping stuff in your yard. This very inadvertently does a lot of interesting things at the same time. And I feel like the utility of a creature like this might fall under the radar just a little bit. Being able to fill up your graveyard, being able to grab your lands to make sure you're curving out with, not missing a land drop, all that stuff seems wonderful, and the body is big enough to be relevant, so this one gets a thumbs up from me. But next up we've got Fire Rim Form, an aura with flash that enchants a creature for 1 red and 1, and when it enters, enchanted creature gains first strike until end of turn. Enchanted creature gets +2/+0. This isn't anything crazy. This is basically a way to have an instant speed interaction, a combat trick that also gives you value that lasts for the rest of the game, even past that turn, which Wizards has a habit of making a lot of their combat tricks do that these days, finding ways of getting extra value. In this case, it happens to be an aura with flash, so he only gets the first strike in that one instance when you first play this aura, so in that respect, it's a combat trick. Buff up your guy's power, get the first strike, kill their dude in combat, but yours survives when they don't see it coming. Kinda nice. And then it just gets the +2/+0 forever after that, which is also nice. But then again, there are probably better options for removal and tricks. This is a common, but if you are running low on that sort of thing in Limited, you'll definitely slam this. Next up, we've got Piercing Exhale, an instant for 1 green and 1. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may behold a dragon. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker. If a dragon was beheld, you surveil 2. So it's basically just a 2-mana bite spell that can hit a creature or planeswalker, except sometimes you'll also get to surveil 2. It is nice that it's at instant speed and it's common, so it's pretty easy to pick up later on in drafts. But yeah, even just that Surveil 2 as an incidental way to just stack the top couple cards of your deck and make sure you're getting the things you want and not whiffing your turns with things you don't need is nice extra value, even if you're not trying to put stuff in your graveyard. But if you're trying to put stuff in your graveyard, then you got the trifecta, right? You can set up the top, you can put stuff in your graveyard to fuel your graveyard synergies, and you can kill the thing you're trying to kill. So decks that can utilize all three, I think, are going to want this even more. But even just decks that are using green that are light on removal will probably pick this up a little bit later in the draft. Next up, we've got Worthy Cost, a sorcery for 1 black mana. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you have to sack a creature, and then you exile a creature or planeswalker. We've seen this stuff before. It kind of stinks that we don't have the versatility of choosing whether to sacrifice a creature or pay some kind of alternate cost. Like other spells that we've seen like this in the past, but we do get to exile, and we do get the versatility of hitting a creature or a planeswalker, so you could do a lot worse. And in this format, at least in Limited, there should be a ton of tokens flying around. It's worth pointing out that this card is especially good because of the new mechanic that allows you to make tokens every single turn that have to be sacrificed at the end of the turn. Being able to use this in conjunction with that means you're almost always going to have something to sacrifice so that you can use this card without having to actually get rid of something valuable, which makes this card way more valuable within Limited, this Limited specifically. And that makes sense for why, you don't have an alternate way to play this and stuff, because the value with the cards that are going to surround it, specifically in the Limited format, are going to be enough that even just as it is, the card's going to be very powerful. So if you're in one of those go wide decks using those token decks, you're definitely going to want to prioritize this removal relatively highly. Next up, we've got Krotiq Nestguard. This is a 4/4 insect with Defender for 1 green and 2, and it has an ability to pay 1 green and 2, and it can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. I kind of love this guy. Just comes in as a huge roadblock to aggro decks on turn 3. Like, just a big 4/4 body. They don't want to waste their removal on it because it can only block. But they might have to if they're running a low to the ground aggro deck. And then just like later on in the game, if it's still around and you're out of gas and you need mana sinks, like you have another attacker that could be a super relevant attacker. And that's pretty cool. So I think this guy will see some play in Limited. Next up, we've got Sinkhole Surveyor. This card's bananas, a 1/3 bird scout with flying for 1 black and 1, and whenever this creature attacks, you lose 1 life, and this creature endures. that means it can get a +1/+1 counter or make a 1/1 white spirit creature token. I think most of the time you're going to choose the token, because if you just stack up counters every turn and then all of a sudden your opponent uses removal on it, you lose all of your value and it's just dead. But having the ability to choose one or the other is still nice, having that versatility. And it also happens on attack. So even if you just swing in and put a counter on this, you immediately hit for 2. This thing is attacking as a 2/3 if you choose the counter in the air, which is super nice. But like I said, most times I think you're just going to make a 1/1 token every single turn, and this guy's going to have a huge target on his back because it's going to be a lot harder for them to block him since he's in the air, kill him that way, or stop him from swinging in. So it's going to be a lot easier to trigger that Endure every single turn. If they don't kill him early, you're just going to overwhelm the opposition with 1/1 tokens. And these aren't like the warrior tokens that have to be sacrificed in a turn. They stick around forever. So I think this guy just creates an insane amount of value over the course of the game. It absolutely has to be dealt with immediately, forces your opponent to use up their removal in their hand, and all of that is amazing. And if they don't have the removal and this thing survives, especially if you're in the kind of deck that's going to run it where you can get extra value out of all of those tokens, whether it's by sacrificing or convoking or, you know, just buffing up your team with counters, whatever the case may be, this could get really, really nutty really quick. So all around, I think this thing is so good in so many ways, and it will absolutely see play in Standard. But next up, we've got Shocking Sharpshooter, a 1/3 human archer with reach for 1 red and 1. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. I need a drink of coffee. Hold on a second. So you mean to tell me this is like all of those pingers we normally get that trigger off of non-creature spells, except we get to use it in a creature deck? In a set where there are multiple keywords for creating 1/1 tokens very efficiently every single turn? That seems bananas to me. Is this guy maybe, possibly, playable in Standard? This might be playable in Standard. It's just like those enchantments we already have that ping. The main difference being it's a creature itself that can put pressure on the opponent outside of its ability, right? It can shut down aggro and help to win the race because it's got 3 toughness and reach. I really like this. I mean, granted they can use removal to kill it, but if you're running a creature deck, you're probably going to have other creatures that are bigger targets than this guy. So if they're wasting their removal on this guy, you probably have a much bigger threat that's sticking around. I think I might try to build that in Standard. I think mainly this guy is meant to be used within that specific archetype within Limited, but I think he could be good in Standard. I think we should build like some kind of crazy Mardu tokens deck that just goes super wide every turn and gets a ton of triggers off cards like this. I think it could be really fun, and I want to try it at least and see if we can make it work. But next up, we've got Wingspan Stride, an enchantment aura that enchants a creature for 1 blue mana. That creature gets +1/+1 and flying forever, and you can pay 1 blue and 2 to return this aura to its owner's hand. So I guess not forever, right? You can keep recasting it on other things. I really like this though. Like, you play this on your best creature, and for 1 mana, not only is it bigger, but it gets that evasion, it flies through for damage, or it blocks their big dragon now, or whatever you need to do with the flying. But then, like, if you can hold up the 3 mana, if they try to kill the thing that this is enchanting, you can just pop it back to your hand in response so that you don't lose the Wingspan Stride. You get to replay it on a different creature. So if you have enough foresight to see something like that coming, you can do that. You could also just do that on your turn because now you have a better target. You want to give a better thing flying, especially if it's something that triggers on attack triggers or combat damage triggers or things like that, and it's going to be much, much better to give evasion to. You can easily just return this, play it on your better creature, and go about your day, which is also another cool way to use it. But I really like the smart play of getting ahead of it and trying to stay ahead of removal by keeping 3 mana open. I think that's pretty cool. I don't think you're going to be able to do it a lot of time unless you're ahead and you're keeping that lead and your opponent's on the back foot. But still, it's cool that the opportunity is there to do it in the right circumstances. I think this card is pretty cool. But next up, we've got Wail of War, an instant for 1 black and 2, and you choose one. Creatures target opponent controls get -1/-1 until end of turn, or return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I like this card. I like that it's instant speed because that makes it never useless. If this was sorcery speed, and your opponent was ahead, and you couldn't afford to take a turn off to get 2 creatures back from your graveyard, normally, if this was sorcery speed, it would be kind of do nothing. It would sit in your hand, and you wouldn't have a good opportunity to play it. But the fact that this is instant speed means even if that -1/-1 doesn't just outright kill creatures because they have 1 toughness, you can use it in combat as a combat trick to lower their power and toughness so that some of your creatures can kill their creatures when they otherwise wouldn't, or so that you can block their creature without your guy dying when otherwise maybe it would have. So I like that because of the instant speed, it's not completely useless. It almost has 3 modes, right? You can return 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hand, or you can kill all their 1 toughness stuff, or you can use it as a combat trick to debuff their dudes to get a little bit of extra value in situations where you wouldn't have without it. So when you think of it like that, I like this card a lot more. And in fact, just being able to hold up the ability to return 2 creatures at instant speed means if you've got instant speed removal in your hand and you think you might have to use that, so you don't want to risk, playing the card that returns your 2 big bombs to your hand, you can just say go, hold up the instant speed removal, and then when they don't play their big bomb and you think it's safe and they pass the turn, then you just use the thing to get back 2 creature cards. So there is a lot of versatility in this because it's an instant, and I feel like most people will overlook the fact that it's an instant and undervalue this a little bit in Limited. I think you should keep your eye on it. I think it's going to be a contender for being an important card for sure. But next up, we've got Dispelling Exhale. This is an instant for 1 blue and 1. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may behold a dragon. Counter a spell unless its controller pays 2, but if a dragon was beheld, you counter it unless its controller pays 4. This is exactly what I want to see in common counter spells, because it's not completely useless later on. In certain situations, you can get them to have to pay 4, which makes it a little bit more relevant a little bit later in the game than it otherwise would be. It makes it that much more likely to actually make the cut in your deck, which is cool. But even if you just get this early on curve and you don't have a dragon yet, you can still get value out of it by counterspelling something early if they're tapping out and that sort of thing. So yeah, this card is great. I'm not a big fan of playing counterspells in Limited, but there are those out there that certainly are, and they will play this card. Next up, we've got Starry-Eyed Skyrider, a 1/3 human scout with flying for 1 white and 2. Whenever this creature attacks, another target creature you control gains flying until end of turn, and attacking tokens you control have flying. This is really cool. We've seen cards like this in the past that are understated flyers that give another creature flying when they swing, but we've never seen one that just has a straight up static ability also giving flying to a whole bunch of your other creatures all at once, in this case being attacking tokens. So even if you don't want to attack with your big relevant creatures, you just slam this and all of your tokens turn into win conditions if they don't have a flyer. You just swing in with all your tokens every turn and just close out the game. I kind of love that. It is a bummer that it only works on attacks, both its normal trigger and the thing that targets attacking tokens. Or it doesn't really target attacking tokens, it just turns on for attacking tokens. They all have to be attacking. So it's not super good if your opponent has big flyers and they've got the upper hand and they're attacking you every turn and you need to find a way to chump block. It's not going to be great there. Your tokens are only going to get flying when they're attacking. But as a way to help just win the game, this works super well as a win condition. I like it a lot. I have a feeling this is going to be a really good card in Limited that people are going to pick pretty highly. But next up, we've got Roar of Endless Song. This is a saga. This is the Temur Clan Saga for 5 mana in the colors of Temur. And it's kind of wild. On Chapter 1, you create a 5/5 green elephant creature token. That's fine. You spent 5 mana, got a 5/5. Slightly below rate for what we can expect with today's power creep, but still good. But then on Chapter 2, you get another 5/5 token, and at that point, it's just absurd. 1 5 mana enchantment that makes 3 permanents, and 2 of them are 5/5 creatures. Imagine if, just look at this card and pretend it's not a saga. Pretend it's just an enchantment that on ETB makes 2 5/5s. That's insane, right? And then you just have the saga to sacrifice or to bounce or whatever you want to do with it. That's kind of nuts. Now, granted, it is spread apart. You get them 1 turn apart, but I think that's negligible in comparison to the amount of value the card's getting you. And then you also have a Chapter 3. So on Chapter 3, you double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. So that's just nuts. Make 2 big bodies, and then all of a sudden set up your Alpha Strike and just swing in with a massive, massive amount of power, as long as you're building the right kind of deck. But if you're in Temur, and you're not just smashing a whole bunch of creatures down on the battlefield every turn, you're probably playing Temur wrong. So I think in those decks, this is going to be nuts. And a card like this just gives me hope that maybe we can have some sort of mono green, not mono green because this is Temur, but some sort of, you know, heavy green, you know, heavy green stompy deck, mid-range deck, really to make a comeback. I want to see a mid-range stompy deck. I want to see a base green deck that just plays huge things and smashes the opponent's face, some kind of zoo deck, and it's just, it works in the meta. I want that so bad because we have a ton of really good aggro decks right now, a ton of really good control decks, and we do have some mid-range decks, but the mid-range decks that are doing well in the meta right now aren't necessarily the old school style of stompy decks that just put an insane amount of power and toughness on the field. And I would love to see a deck like that rear its ugly head in the standard meta after this set drops. I think it's about time we get something like that, and maybe this card will be a part of that. So I'm crossing my fingers. I think that would be a cool addition to the meta. But next up, we've got Delta Bloodflies, a 1/2 insect with flying for 1 black and 1. Whenever this creature attacks, if you control a creature with a counter on it, each opponent loses 1 life. Interesting. I mean, it is just a common, it's understated, but making them lose a life automatically just by controlling a creature with literally any counter on it seems kind of nice. I mean, this is not going to be super good. It's going to be a lot worse in this set than in other limited formats because there's so much flying in this set because of all the dragons, that very quickly there will be a flyer that can shut this down. But if your opponent's running tokens that have flying, the tokens can't really block this effectively because of the 2 toughness, which is nice. So maybe if we see a lot of that within the limited format, a lot of tokens that have flying, and this is able to get through for value against that kind of a board, that could be cool. But again, I think this is just filler for your limited deck, especially if you're in the deck that's focusing on counters, the Abzan deck or whatever it might be. Not super great. It's gonna get shut down super quick by all of the bigger flyers that are just everywhere in this set, and that's kind of unfortunate. But next up, we've got Highspire Bell-Ringer, a 1/4 Djinn Monk with flying for 1 blue and 2, and the second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. This is super cool for a common. I like that we can enable this style of play in Limited very easily by having access to a common like this specifically. So all of those things that have flurry, that have stuff that triggers on your second spell, it's going to be way easier to trigger that stuff. You're going to be able to cast spells that you'd normally have to wait a whole turn, and that's if you have the land to actually make your land drops. You'll be able to do second spells that are a turn earlier, right, than you otherwise would be able to because of this guy being on the field. And also having halfway decent stats, a flyer with a big butt that can hold down the fort, block all their smaller flyers, maybe even contribute to damage by pinging in for 1 every turn if they only have ground guys. All of that seems good. I think this is actually really good for a common. I still don't think it's going to be like a super high pick or anything, but I think you'll be able to scoff this up pretty easily towards the end of a draft, and I think they will end up being worth running in those decks that rely on flurry. But next up, we've got Wayspeaker Bodyguard, a 3/4 Orc Monk for 1 white and 3, and when this creature enters, you return target non-land permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. That's pretty good. It's basically like a Gravedigger with more restrictions, but also it can hit things that aren't creatures, so it's less restrictions in a way, and it's white. I love just seeing this in white, because I don't even know color pie wise how this lines up. We have such a good feel for how Gravedigger works in limited play in conjunction with all of the black stuff you would normally use with Gravedigger, but this is kind of new design space, so I'm excited to see where this lands. But it also has the Flurry ability, so whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you get to tap target creature an opponent controls. This thing just does everything. This card is going to be really, really good in Limited. Even if you just get back a 2-drop creature, and you get that Flurry ability, that's just like extra gravy just thrown on top. Sometimes you get to just tap things down. And it's worth noting you don't only activate that flurry ability on your turn. So if you have 2 cheap instants that you can play on your opponent's turn, you can actually play those instants before they go to declare attackers, tap down their best attacker so that they can't swing in with it. Maybe it's a big dragon, right? And then it's still tapped down so that maybe you can swing through it on your turn, which is also really cool. But you can also just target with Flurry on your turn to get rid of a blocker, and you don't have to worry about playing instants, right? You can play 2 creatures. It's just any second spell. It doesn't have to be a non-creature or anything like that. So just jam 2 cheap creatures, trigger the Flurry, tap down their big blocker, and then start going to town. Having access to an ability like that as gravy on a card that's already putting value into your hand, 2-for-1 value when you play it, seems really awesome. I had to reread this card because I almost felt like it was supposed to be a non-creature permanent, because both abilities on the same card seem kind of gnarly if that first one isn't limited to non-creatures. Like, it's just being able to grab 2-drops or less that aren't creatures is just extra, in addition to you're probably always going to at least be able to grab a 2-drop creature with this, and have the Flurry ability. All of it's nuts. This guy's nuts and limited. You're gonna play this. You're gonna probably draft it pretty high regardless of if you're in a Flurry deck or not, because I think it just has so much value baked in. But next up, we've got Defibrillating Current, a sorcery for 3 mana in the colors of Mardu, and it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain 2 life. I don't really love this card. If you compare it to Lightning Strike, or rather Lightning Helix, right? It does 1 more damage for 1 more mana, but also you gain 1 less life. And you can't even target their head, like with Lightning Strike, right? You can only hit a creature or planeswalker. So in every way, it feels worse than Lightning Strike. The couple key ways that it's better: first of all, you don't have to play it in Boros. You can play this in mono black if you wanted. You'd have to spend 5 mana, which would suck. But you can play this in Orzhov, you can play this in Rakdos, and it becomes a 4 mana spell. Not that that's great, but still, there is the versatility there. I think the one way this can be used that makes it really exciting is potentially in conjunction with Up the Beanstalk. Even though it doesn't have green in the mana base, I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you could play this for 3 mana, and it counts as a 6 mana spell on the stack and triggers your Up the Beanstalk. So I think maybe you can draw off of Up the Beanstalk. If you guys know for sure, let me know in the comments, because we've seen a bunch of these cards that use the hybrid mana, and I know that when they're in your deck and in your hand, they definitely count as the maximum cost. So this would be a 6-drop in your hand or in your deck. But I'm not sure how that works in conjunction with Up the Beanstalk. It might be that when this spell is on the stack, it's only whatever cost you actually paid, and maybe the Up the Beanstalk only sees that. But that doesn't make sense to me, because we've got stuff like Leyline Binding, where we get to pay less because of Domain, and it still counts as 6 on the stack and triggers the Up the Beanstalk. So my gut says this will work with Up the Beanstalk, and that's the one major way that this gets better. And in fact, since we have a whole bunch of cards coming in this set that use this mechanic with this hybrid mana, we might see Up the Beanstalk get even more powerful and have even more crazy options of cards that you can use with it, which on the one hand is kind of exciting, because maybe we can build a completely different kind of deck that uses Up the Beanstalk rather than the same old Domain decks, and that seems fun. But on the other hand, it means the decks that are already super oppressive using Up the Beanstalk are just going to get even more potential options to be even more gross. And I'm already sick of those decks, so I don't know how good that is. I don't know how good that is for the meta, but either way, it's coming. I'm going to explore different decks that can utilize that for sure, because I think it's super awesome. But yeah, if you're using this the normal way, the fair way, it's a little... I mean, in Limited, you're going to be able to splash this pretty much wherever you want, so it is at least worth considering. But yeah, interesting card. But that brings us to our last card of today. Lotus Light Dancers, a 3/6 zombie bard with lifelink for 5 mana in the colors of Sultai. And when this creature enters, you search your library for a black card, a green card, and a blue card. Put those cards into your graveyard and then shuffle. There's a few things I want to point out about this. First of all, you can find multicolored cards. So if you had 2 Golgari cards in your deck, you could find one and it's your black card, and you could find the other one and it's your green card. In fact, you could find 2 of the same Golgari card if you wanted to, one counting as your black and one counting as your green, and then still fetch a blue. And that blue could be like a Dimir card or a Simic card or whatever the case may be. In fact, if you wanted to, you could find 3 more Lotus Light Dancers and put them all in your graveyard. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could do that. Now, the other thing that's really crazy about this card is there's so much coming in this set that give you automatic value from the graveyard. You have Renew, which you can exile stuff from the graveyard with their Renew ability if they're just in your graveyard, which Lotus Light Dancers can put them there. You also have Harmonize, which is basically Flashback, except there's ways to give a cost reduction on it. You can just put Harmonize cards in your graveyard and get access to using those. You also just have Flashback in general. I'm pretty sure there's some Flashback cards that are still in Standard right now. All of that stuff is stuff that you can just find and stick in your graveyard, and it's just free value. So in that way, Lotus Light Dancers is kind of a 4-for-1. If you have the right cards in your deck to grab, it just gives you automatic value, sets you up with automatic value in your graveyard, while also giving you a 3/6 body with life linking, which is not nothing. That could matter too. I also want to point out that it's a zombie, so it could work with some of the zombie tribal synergies. We got a zombie card recently, I forget the name of it, but it's a 2-drop that lets you replay zombies from your graveyard. So this could die, you could replay it, search up more stuff to get with that guy, which seems also kind of cool. But you can also find, I believe, Rite of the Moth, and have that be your black card. Put that into your graveyard, and that has a flashback ability to reanimate a creature from your graveyard. So you could grab Rite of the Moth, and then grab a creature that has green or blue in its cost, or 2 creatures, one having green, one having blue in their costs, and then you have the card that you need to bring back the thing that you got already in the graveyard, able to be flashed back. So that seems really good too. Granted, that's a little expensive, so at the end of the day, I don't know if it's actually good enough to be competitive. It might be a bit of a meme, but at the very least, it's something worth exploring, and I think there are a lot more options like that for things you could hit with a card like Lotus Light Dancers to just add value. And if nothing else, it helps you turn on your Delirium, it helps you turn on your Threshold, all of that stuff. I think there's so many ways this can be used, and I think that's why it's a rare. I think on first glance, it's kind of like, why is this a rare? But when you take into account just all of the ways that are built into this set and beyond this set in Standard to abuse things going into your graveyard, it makes sense, because there's just so many ways, there's so much value to be had here, and the sky's the limit with how you brew around a card like this, I think. So I'm excited to brew around it for sure. I'm really excited to see the last couple rares that are dropping tomorrow and finish off this set. So that's gonna do it for today, but stick with me because we'll be back for the final spoiler video tomorrow, and I'm excited. Please like the video, helps me get out to more people, helps the channel grow. I appreciate it more than words. I really do mean that. This is a lot of work, it's really hard, and you guys that stick by me and watch every video and hit the like button, it makes all the difference in the world. So thank you. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an upload. Tons of crazy content on the way. Spoiler content. I've got deck techs you guys haven't seen yet. Ridiculous crazy stuff. And I've got a ton of Wonders of the First content, which if you haven't heard about that game, you will very soon, because I played Sealed for the first time ever, and I liked it more than any time I ever played Sealed in Magic. and that was like a huge light bulb moment for me. I think that game might be just the real deal, and I think a tsunami's coming down the line with that game, especially when a lot of people into Magic right now are starting to get kind of disillusioned with it because of just all of the universes beyond and all of the seemingly bad decisions that Wizards is making. And don't get me wrong, I love Magic, and I'm going to stick by it, but Wonders is exciting. So if you haven't yet, you should look into it. I've got lots of content coming for that. But more importantly, the last spoiler video for this set is coming tomorrow. Look forward to it. I'll see you there. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck text, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.